Pursuant to Article 3 of the Constitution, I, as well as every citizen of Kenya and state of public officers, have the obligation to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution in performing any of my functions. The national values and principles of governance contained in Article 10 of the Constitution bind all state organs, public officers, and all persons, including myself as the Deputy President, wherever we make or implement public policy decisions. In relation to this matter, these national values and principles include the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people, human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of the marginalized. Adherence to these principles became extremely important when we, as state officers, are contemplating legal evacuation of citizens with a duty to avoid inhuman forced evictions that would be contrary to our Constitution and international law. While campaigning with the President, and subsequently when I was sworn in as Deputy President, you can remember, I promised as a key pillar to the Kenya Kwanza government that there will be no forced and unlawful evictions, and that all evictions shall be human and entail legal compensation. You remember my inauguration speech. I said never again shall this administration carry out inhuman evictions in a brutal manner as was done in the previous administration. I and my office, the Office of the Deputy President, have undertaken extensive engagement with all parties in regard to the cabinet decision on eviction, which I fully support, including the Nairobi River, which is an entity under the ODP and County Government of Nairobi. Adherence to these principles become extremely important when we as state officers are contemplating legal evacuation of citizens with a duty to avoid inhuman forced evictions that would be contrary to our Constitution and international law. Guideline number 6 of the United Nations General Assembly, guidelines for the implementation of the rights to adequate housing, prohibits forced evictions, and the state should ensure that any eviction under domestic law are fully compliant with international law. The guidelines further require meaningful engagement with communities to ensure that the rights of residents are implemented cooperatively without the need for eviction procedures or police enforcement. I have supported the implementation of cabinet directives on the eviction, safe for the fact that on being informed that each person residing at the Nairobi River was being evicted and paid only 10,000 shillings, which I and many other Kenyans felt inadequate compensation for eviction. I insisted that the government should abide by constitutional dictates and international norms while implementing any cabinet decision, including eviction, and maintain the dignity of citizens of Kenya facing evictions. My statements did not and cannot be construed to undermining the president, because the president, like me, sought to defend the very Constitution. I hope I'm very clear. Am I clear? I cannot, I will not oversee, supervise forced, brutal eviction against the people of Kenya. That I will not, and I can't. President William Ruto and I on the campaign trail gave a solemn undertaking to the people of Kenya that under our administration, that will never happen. So when I was asked to oversee brutal, inhuman eviction against innocent people without notice, without compensation, without due regard to what the Constitution says, I found it very, very difficult, and I rescued myself and allowed the CS for Interior, the Head of Public Service, the PS for Internal Security to proceed. If that is the reason why Rigathi Gachagua should be impeached as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya and sent home for refusing to undermine the Constitution, for saying no to brutal and inhuman eviction of poor Kenyans, let it be. Undermining devolution by allegedly holding a meeting in Nairobi. Good people. I'm sure you are as embarrassed as I am. That a deputy president holding a public meeting to talk to the people of Kenya is undermining devolution. To start with, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, in the duties spelled out by the President under Executive Order number 1 of 2023, he has the duties to coordinate intergovernmental relations. I work with the governors. This is the home of devolution. I hold meetings with the governors every day. I chair IBEC. I cannot be accused, and I need evidence tabled that I undermined devolution. The motion alleges that on 29 September 2024, I unlawfully interfered with the running of the Nairobi City Council government by holding a public rally where I allegedly incited citizens against law directives of the county government on planning and relocation of markets. This is my response. It is not true that I incited citizens against the law directives of the county government as alleged. I wish to clarify and point out that when I held the public rally, I merely requested the governor of Nairobi County to speak and listen to grievances which were being raised by the market traders. Videos will be produced tomorrow in the National Assembly. I, Rigathi Gachagua, asking Governor Sakaja to take time to listen to the people and listen to their grievances. The traders had sought me out to intervene and request the governor on their behalf to dialogue with them and seek a solution to their grievances with regard to the relocation of markets. Had the governor listened to these traders, they would have had no business coming looking for me. All I was saying is listen to the people. Before you relocate them, have public participation. Most of those traders have lived in Wakulima market for 40 years. They wanted to discuss with the governor what happens to us, what happens to our customers, what happens to the distances that we cover, what about the extra cost of going to the new relocation. And I think the traders were right. Requesting a meeting with an elected leader is their right. And when they requested me to go and meet them, because they were desperate and they needed somebody to hear to them, I did go and speak to them. Again, this motion alleges that on 20 September 2024, I unlawfully interfered with the running of the Nairobi City Council by inciting citizens against law directives of the county government. The leadership of Nairobi business traders approached me sometime in March 2024 at my official residence to discuss multiple issues affecting business and requested engagement in the resolution and intervention on these issues adverse to business. Consequent to this meeting, I directed that short, medium, and long-term strategies be undertaken, coordinated by the Office of the Deputy President, to address the issues raised that are cross-cutting with the agencies including KRA, Kenya Post Authority, Counterfeit Authority, Kenya Bureau of Standards, the National Police Service, Kenya Corporate Board, given that devolution is under the Office of the Deputy President. I was just doing my work. On 11th April 2024, the Small Traders and Government Agencies Technical Committee, coordinated by my office, held a meeting to discuss issues raised by the small traders, including Mudhurwa Market, attended by ODP staff in a supportive role in keeping with the draft framework of cooperation and engagement between government, Nairobi City County, and the Nairobi business traders. Subsequent to that meeting, a meeting on 24th April 2024 between Nairobi City Council and the Nairobi small traders and numerous others, the ODP on 22nd July 2024 invited His Excellency Johnson Sakaja, among other state officers, to a meeting at ODP. Officers scheduled for 22nd July 2024 to review the draft framework of the cooperation and engagement between the small traders and the government of Kenya. On 3rd September 2024, the ODP wrote to Governor Johnson Sakaja and all other stakeholders submitting a final combined draft of the framework for review and feedback. After all the engagement between all the parties and the draft framework, Governor Sakaja decided to arbitrarily proceed with the relocation of Muthurwa Market. That gave rise to the cry by the people. Meetings had been held, a framework had been agreed on, and as an elected leader, as Deputy President, I think going to listen to people who are in anguish, who are crying, is responsible leadership. The government that President William Ruto and I lead is a listening government, and going to listen to people cannot be an impeachable crime. I would like to know how members of parliament would want to send me home for going to listen to people who are crying that they need to be listened to. I would like to understand. Undermining devolution by allegedly holding meetings to fight alcohol. I think tomorrow will be the greatest circus. Or do I call it the theater of the absurd? That Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, undertaking duties assigned to him by the President to fight illicit brews and drugs across the country, should be impeached because by doing so, he is interfering with the devolution. I held meetings in Nyeri, attended by Governor Kahiga, Governor Waiguru, Governor Irogo Kangata, Governor Wamatangi, Governor Kiari Badilisha. I held a meeting in Chuka, attended by governors of Embu, of Tharaka Nithi, of Meru. I attended a meeting in Mombasa, attended by governors of Kwale, a representative of the governor of Mombasa, the governor of Taita Taveta, a representative of the governor of Lamu, to discuss. I held a meeting in Nakuru, nearly with all governors present, and all of us jointly, under my chairmanship, the Ministry of Interior and Governors, we agreed on how to tackle the menace of illicit brews. And we have a good story to tell. Out of those efforts, our young men who are sleeping in trenches are back home. Women are very happy their husbands are back home and they are bringing food. In fact, some children have been born. Some have even been named Gigi because of the effort that I have put in fighting illicit brews. I think the people of Kenya would be shocked to hear tonight that one of the accusations against their deputy president and why he should go home is because he led the battle to fight illicit brews and drugs that has caused havoc among our young people. Please, if Rigathi Gachagua is a problem, why don't you assign this job to somebody else? Because this job must be done. We must get our children off drugs. We must fight illicit alcohol. And saying that you want to impeach the deputy president because fighting illicit brews and drugs is interfering with the devolution. I think this is the greatest joke of the year. Even the 291 MPs who signed this motion, most of them, because I know them, have looked for me personally to thank me for the way I have successfully led the war against drugs and illicit brews. And that is why that sham public participation should have had my responses, so that the women could hear that one of the accusations against the deputy president is that he should be sent home because he was leading the war against illicit brews and drugs. I don't know. I think there is something wrong in this country. That somebody has sat down to draft a motion to impeach the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And one of the grounds is that he has interfered with the devolution by leading the war to fight illicit brews and drugs. This is a height of absurdity. And Parliament will be the theater of the absurd. I would like to hear what is the nexus between fighting illicit brew and interfering with the devolution. I would like to know. I've never had any governor complain. I've never had any MCA complain. I've never had any Kenyan complain. The only Kenyans who have complained are few. They are the manufacturers who are manufacturing poison under the guise of producing alcohol. Those are the only few ones. I beg the National Assembly and the Senate, most of the National Assembly, to save face, to consider striking this ground before the motion tomorrow, because it sounds ridiculous to the people of Kenya. Again, if Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has to be sent home for fighting drugs and illicit alcohol, so be it. Sensational statements against the National Intelligence Service and its Director General and other officers. My response. In relation to this allegation, I wish to state that the National Intelligence Service holds a very critical role in ensuring the safety and security of our country. They are responsible for gathering intelligence and share it with all our law enforcement agencies to ensure that the country is safe at all times. Consequently, when the country was caught flat-footed with regard to the scope and extent of the public's dissatisfaction with the Finance Bill 2024, which degenerated in the Gen Z protests, it pointed to the failure of the National Intelligence Service in carrying out its mandate. I am persuaded that the National Intelligence Service ought to have known beforehand that the public was completely opposed to the Finance Bill, and they ought to have briefed the President before the protests began, as this would have caused a change of tact by government regarding the proposed bill, and protest which culminated in the loss of innocent lives and destruction of property could have been avoided. Hence, I express my opinion, as this is in my public media briefing in Mombasa, and my utterances were not any different from what happens to other countries when there is lapse or failure by the intelligence agencies. Many of you will recall that after September 11th terrorist attack in the US intelligence agencies were massively criticized. An inquiry was even opened to investigate why the intelligence agency was not able to detect and thwart the terror attack. Under the Constitution of Kenya, the government agencies are supposed to be accountable to the Kenyan people, including the National Intelligence Service, and calling them out when there is a dereliction of duty does not amount to undermining them. In any case, the Director General of NIS is not above the law. He is a public officer. Just like the President, the Deputy President, Cabinet Ministers, he too is subject to criticism like any other public officer. In fact, I'll have videos. President William Ruto, as Deputy President, at one time criticized the then Director General of the National Intelligence Service. In another video, he heavily criticized the then Inspector General of Police for the performance. I have learned from my boss how this job is done. It's clear. It's done. I mean, nobody, the President is criticized daily. The Deputy President is criticized daily. And we take no offense. The Director General of the National Intelligence Service is not above the law. He is a public officer. He is accountable to the people of Kenya. And when one feels he has underperformed, he'll be called out. Because that is the nature of the Kenyan state. And this I learned from my boss when he was Deputy President. Again, there was an issue that the president and I committed ourselves publicly that never again in our administration shall ever we allow abductions and extrajudicial killings. Despite the police keeping on misleading the president to say that there are no abductions, you all know, you have evidence on video that they have happened. And that is what I commented, and I said it is wrong. And because I'm a truthful person, I'll say what is wrong when it happens. Despite the fact that I am compelled by the principle of collective responsibility to be part and parcel of every decision made by government, that I'll continue to do so, but only those decisions that are constitutional and within the rule of law. Abductions and judicial killings are unconstitutional. I will never support them. President William Ruto has been criticized left, right, and center. I have not seen him take anybody to court for criticizing him. Why is Rigathi Gachagua being impeached for calling out the Director General of the National Intelligence Service? The Deputy President is criticized daily. The judiciary is criticized daily. The media is criticized daily, including the Star, whom I have criticized today. But that is as far as it goes. And again, despite being just the Deputy President, I enjoy a constitutional right in the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech. And if the Director General of the National Intelligence Service is aggrieved, there are mechanisms of how he can take me to court and sue me for defamation. And I'll be able to argue why I said what I said. So that is not a ground for impeachment. I mean, that is curtailing liberties, the freedom of expression, the freedom to hold public officers accountable for their actions. And I want to say finally, I think I've literally addressed all the grounds because I felt it's important for the people of Kenya to know the allegations against the Deputy President and his responses.